I make it 6:30, ladies and gentlemen. Good evening and welcome to the Audit and Standards Committee of Melton Borough Council. I'm Bob Child and I'm the chairman of this committee. Members are reminded that we will be using the audio-visual system this evening, and the meeting will also be streamed live on YouTube. There is a quick reference card placed on the desk in front of you, which provides instruction on how to use the basic speaking function of the microphone. Members are asked to physically raise their hands in the usual way to indicate they wish to speak, and to use their microphones when speaking for the benefit of all present. The microphone is live when the red light displays. Can you please ensure mobile phones are switched to silent? I will now just provide a reminder of the evacuation procedure. In the event of having to evacuate the council chamber, please leave by one of the 6 emergency exits around the sides of the chamber. Please assemble at the far side of the front car park nearest to the park entrance. Officers will be on hand to assist persons who require any assistance. Public recording of the meeting. There is legislation that allows the public to film, record or use social media at a council meeting. This must not be disruptive to the good order of the meeting, nor include any filming or recording. Just a point of note, I'll be calling a very short comfort break at the convenient time around 7:30 for 5 minutes. So we move on to apologies. Item 1. There are Prue Chandler, Councillor Chandler, I understand. Anybody else? No, no one else. So Councillor Baines is not present at the current time. Item 2, minutes. To confirm the minutes of the meeting held on the 9th of March 2021. I would like to propose the minutes, and could I have request of a seconder?
I can second those minutes, thank you.
Okay, thank you. That's Councillor Usons. The minutes will be confirmed as approved unless any member wishes to raise any amendments. No. Okay. Item 3, declarations of interest. Does anyone present have anything to declare in respect of the items on the agenda? No. Item 4, Cllr Financial Management Code. Dawn Garton, Director for Corporate Services, to provide a brief introduction to the report. If I could have a proposer and a seconder for the recommendation, I will propose it.
Councillor Child, I think Dawn Garton was just going to need to give a summary of the report before you seek a proposer.
Okay,
and a seconder.
right. Thank you. Just getting on a bit quick. Okay, over to you.
Okay, yeah, thank you, Chairman. I'd also like to draw members' attention to the supplementary agenda item that has previously been circulated, which serves as an appendix to the report, and apologies that did not come out with your original pack. So just a brief introduction really. So Cllr developed the Financial Management Code following concerns within the sector regarding the financial resilience of local authorities. The code contains a series of standards which are considered to be the minimum standards required to meet a council's statutory responsibilities regarding finance. And whilst the compliance with the code is obligatory, how this is achieved is not actually prescribed, so that's up to individual local authorities. Local authorities are required to apply the requirements of the code with effect from the 1st of April 2020, with 2020-21 financial year being a shadow year. And the aim is that by 31st of March 2021, local authorities should be able to demonstrate that they are working towards full implementation of the code. When this first came out, I did undertake an initial assessment against the code. However, I was also awaiting further guidance from Cllr to be published before an internal audit review was undertaken. And that review was requested as a consultancy review to support this self-assessment, so that there was an independent review and I suppose sort of a check against what I myself was saying. The resulting audit report is what has been attached as the supplementary agenda. And whilst the audit confirms that the council is complying in all areas of the code, there are areas where compliance could be improved by moving from either satisfactory to good or from good to substantial. And it should be noted that the audit review, as I said, was undertaken as a consultancy review. And as such, it's not designed to provide assurance over the adequacy of controls. An action plan has also been drawn up and is attached to the report, which takes into account the assurances provided for each of the standards in the code, alongside the availability of resources and the size of the authority. So the action plan will help to improve the level of compliance where this is considered to add value. And I think that's the important point when I've considered each of those actions. Will it add value? Will we get anything out of this, rather than just really getting an extra tick in the box, so to speak? Also, following concerns regarding the impact of COVID-19 on governance in local government bodies, there was a requirement that the annual governance statement for 2020-21 should include an overall conclusion of an assessment of our compliance with the principles of the code. And the draft AGS is presented later on this agenda and includes the outcome of this assessment in front of you. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Dawn. Could I invite a proposer and a seconder for the recommendation tonight, please? Councillor Posner proposes, Councillor Glancy seconds. So I'll throw the debate open to the floor. If anybody has any questions, please raise their hand to indicate their wish to speak. Councillor Glancy.
Thank you, Chair. I note in the delivery dates, there's obviously dates in here. Are we presently on target to achieve those dates, or do we anticipate any slippage?
Yeah, through you, Chair. At present, we are on target. I mean, at the moment, it's early days, and all I'm doing is promoting those dates and reminding people of their responsibilities.
I may have missed it when you were speaking, and I'm sorry if I did, but the things that say satisfactory, are we working to get those to good, or are we happy for them to remain satisfactory?
I think, again, for you, Chair, it's a mixture, really. So the fact that we're satisfactory, that means we're complying, and that's all we're obliged to do. So where we feel that getting to good or very good adds value and we have the resources, then I've included that in the action plan. And where there's something that we feel, well, you know, really, if we were to get to good or very, it's not really going to add any value to us as a small council, or the resources we would have to put in is disproportionate. So welcome to be challenged by members of this committee or any member on that, but it's been my feeling as to what's going to progress us, really.
Yeah. Good. If I could just ask the final outturn and budget variations to be made a standard agenda item with a delivery date of the end of July. I think this is a vital recommendation and an action. I think there's always been a number of high budget variations, and I can understand it for last year, 2021, with the COVID situation, but I think we've got to tighten up on budget holders, and the director is responsible for that team to really get a grip on the actual budgets, because some can be top heavy and they build a contingency in when we could have other schemes. So if that could be noted, Dawn, as a way forward, I'll be grateful. Else ask any questions? The only other points were that the debt management reports are regularly monitored by the leadership team. I think here with the debt amounting to 1.3 million, we do need to maybe the SLT need to regularly review that. So we're hopefully there's only one way, and that's down. I think if all members will agree on that one. Yep. Okay. Anyone else? Right. So we'll move to the vote on the recommendations. The recommendations, just to remind you, are that the committee note the outcome of the internal audit review of the council's compliance with the CIPFA Financial Management Code, and 2.2, approve the action plan at Appendix A. So could I ask for a show of hands for those all in favour? That is unanimous. And was anybody against? I didn't see anyone. No, thank you. So the outcome is, the result of the vote is 7-0, so it's unanimous. Thank you very much. Item 5, I'd like to welcome Rachel Ashley-Caunt, Head of Internal Audit, to provide a brief introduction to her report. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. So the first report that I'm bringing to the committee this evening is an update on counter-fraud activity for the council. So we've pulled together a few different elements to this report. Firstly, we give the Audit and Standards Committee a 6-monthly update on counter-fraud activity. So that's included within here. We also provide an end of year fraud log detailing any frauds that have been reported or investigated during the year and the outcomes of those as appropriate. And an additional item that we've included within the report this year, as mentioned in the first part of the report in the main considerations, we have conducted a self-assessment against the latest guidance from CFAS, who provide the Fighting Fraud and Corruption Locally guidance, and they produced a checklist which has been one of the most recent examples of good practice that we were able to benchmark against. So when that was issued, we conducted an assessment against that during the last 12 months. And I thought it would be useful at this point, as we're looking at counter fraud activity, to share a copy of that with this committee, and also share a copy of the action plan that arose from that assessment, and to be able to confirm that we've actually completed that action as well. So we've been able to close that one off. So a copy of that assessment is provided as table 1 in the Appendix A, page 29 of your pack this evening, with the assessment against each of those areas of criteria. As you'll see, there was one action arising in table 2 on page 35, which has been implemented by the head of the procurement service in addressing the terms and conditions for contractors going forward. I won't go through the full report in terms of the counter fraud activity. I'll take that as read. On page 26, we've listed out the key things we've done during the year across the council. That has included, as I mentioned, a self-assessment. It's been maintaining the fraud risk register, making sure that that's a living document and that informs the work of internal audit, and making sure that we're promoting fraud risks and alerts to any key risk areas that have arisen during the year with staff, to make sure there's an awareness and that people know what to do if they receive a phishing email or such that have been quite prevalent during the last 12 months. We've also done some formal staff briefings that I mentioned. We've also updated the fraud response plan in relation to some key areas of good practice during the year. And we've also done quite a bit of work as an internal audit team in supporting the council during the payment of business grants during the COVID pandemic. This has been an area that's been high on the fraud risk register nationally, and has been subject to its own fraud risk assessments using the templates that have been provided by government. And we've also provided some alerts where we've seen cases at some of our other councils where we've had some fraudulent attempts on those. We've been able to share that intelligence with Melton to make sure that they're able to identify those in the same way. So that's a quick run through of the report, and I'm happy to take any questions. It's for the committee to note to the report this evening.
Okay, thanks very much, Rachel. Could I invite a proposer and a seconder for the recommendation that we note the report? Councillor Illingworth proposes, Councillor Glancy is second. So I will open the debate and invite members to raise their hands to indicate their wish to speak. In the meantime, I did ask at the briefing if all members at 5.1 had done the online training. It is optional, but from April, is it this year? It's going to be mandatory.
That's correct. It's mandatory with immediate effect, essentially.
So at least we'll ensure everybody gets training, and it'll be monitored, I understand, by the director for that section.
That'll be monitored by HR as part of their monitoring of all mandatory training and reported regularly to the senior leadership team. Also, Rachel, were there any COVID breaches, or where are we with the COVID breaches on the business grants? Because obviously there is an option for fraudulent claims. So if you can just update members as to where we are.
Yes, I'm happy to do that. So as I mentioned in the table, there have been a few applications that have been raised with us that we've taken a look at to see whether or not there's a need to refer them to the government department who's dealing with fraudulent applications. We are supporting, as I said, a number of councils on this, and we've been through this process a number of times. I have been notified of one suspected fraudulent application from one of the business grant rounds for Melton, and I've got a meeting next week to get an update on where we are with that and whether or not that needs to be reported through the formal channels, and if so, we're in a position to be able to support the council with doing that, and seek advice on recovery as well.
There is to take place. Would this be a big amount, or are we looking at what, 10, 12,000? Or can't you say?
I wouldn't be able to say at this point. I'll hopefully be able to confirm that after that I've received the further evidence and discussed it with officers next week.
The fraud log on page 37 details the current position. We had the falsified time recordings and the business grants of investigation. So are there any other questions from members? Councillor Pritchett.
What was the result of the disciplinary
If I can come
investigation
in
and hearing?
there, Chair, it would be improper to discuss the outcome of a disciplinary in the event that that person is identifiable. So
On that one, I'll leave that for now.
Anyone else to wish to raise any questions on the counter fraud update report? I take that as no. There's no vote required, so I confirm that the committee has noted the report. Thank you very much, Rachel. In fact, you're still in the chair for item 6, the internal audit annual report and opinion, at which there's no vote. So over to you, Rachel. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. So the second report that I have for you this evening, as you say, is the annual internal audit report and opinion for 2020-21. So as your head of internal audit, I am required to provide an opinion at the end of each year on the council's overall governance, risk and control framework. So that's the purpose of the report this evening for the financial year 2020-21. And the report sets out my opinion, which is summarised on page 44 to 45 of your pack this evening. And the opinion I've given is of satisfactory assurance, which reflects that there were some areas for improvement. We have made some recommendations to improve controls. Ultimately, there were no areas of major organisational risk that would reduce my ability to give a satisfactory mid-range assurance opinion. and that reflects the various sources of assurance that I've considered in producing this report. So primarily that opinion is informed by the work of internal audit and the outcome of the audit assignments. But I've also considered other sources of assurance where possible. So for example, I've confirmed the council has valid public sector network compliance certification, which gives us some assurance over the IT security network. I've also looked at the piece of work that Don's already mentioned this evening on a financial management code, has been able to provide us with some assurance over that in the review of the self-assessment. We also take into consideration the materiality of the findings and the action that management take in light of any findings that we highlight. So if we've identified a weakness in controls, if prompt action has been taken to plug that gap and strengthen the control framework, that's been taken into consideration as well and is reflected within the report. So talking through some of the key sections of the report and setting out the basis for that opinion. Table 1 provides a summary of the audit opinions delivered during the year. So I'm pleased to report that this shows an improvement on previous years with a reduced number of areas receiving a limited assurance and an increase in the number of substantial assurance opinions. So it's a slightly improved picture from the previous year, which is provided at the bottom row of that table. Much of the audit work that we deliver has been reported to the Audit and Standards Committee during the year as part of my progress reporting. But I've brought all of those together along with all of the assignments that have been completed since the last meeting in March, and summarise these for you in table 3 with the assurance opinions that we've been given in relation to each of those. Just to note for members this evening, the first line on table 3 refers to the Financial Systems Key Controls report, which wasn't finalised at the time of producing this annual report. I am pleased to confirm to the committee that has now been finalised, and as such I will be reporting the key findings at the next meeting as part of the first progress report of the new financial year. As I say, many of the assignments have already been reported to you, but I've still wanted to bring this all together for you as part of the annual report. And as such, all of these are summarised, including those that have already been to committee, as Appendix 1 from page 53 onwards. So you have a summary, both of those that have been finalised pre and since the last committee meeting as well. So I'm pleased to say that none of the opinions were of a major organisational risk. As I said, we had 3 areas which received a moderate organisational risk, and all of those do have action plans in place, and we will continue to monitor those and report back to this committee on the progress that's made in the implementation of the action plans. Also provided in the report on page 49 of your pack in table 4 is a review of the implementation of audit recommendations that have arisen during the last 12 months. So of the recommendations that were made, we have 3 that remain overdue at the year end of the financial year. Only one of those was of medium priority, the other 2 were of low priority, which represents that they don't reflect a significant area of risk based on our assessment. It should be noted that table 5 provides a summary of all overdue recommendations. So this includes both those in table 4 that were overdue from the current years, from the year 2020-21's reports, but we did also have, unfortunately, some further recommendations which remain overdue from previous financial years, and those are summarised for you by audit in that table 5. So some of those related to the landlord health and safety audit, which members may recall I brought a progress update on a previous meeting and is included as part of this pack in the report on page 59 to, oh no, sorry, that's asset management. Later on in the report, there's an update on the landlord health and safety progress review, and that's been able to confirm that some of those actions were completed, but as at the time of reporting we do still have 3 of those actions which remain overdue, and we'll continue to follow those up in the new financial year. Other than that, the rest of the report just sets out some of the performance of the internal audit team ourselves against our own KPIs in terms of the delivery of the audit plan, and I think that's a quick run through of the key sections, but I'll be happy to take any questions from members on the content.
Yeah, I mean, as you said in your report, Rachel, all of these came before the audit committee last year, and this is just a summary of those opinions. So if I could ask for a proposer and a seconder for the recommendation, which was to note the internal audit report. Councillor Pam Posnett and Councillor Rebecca Smith seconds. Thank you very much. So we'll open the debate and invite members to speak by raising their hand. Councillor Hewson, thank you.
Chair, just over the cattle market, it's mentioned that there was no audit, no financial records or income had been received. Have they started yet? How far back are they? And because the cattle markets are having a very good time at the minute, and so I think it's something we should look into, that we do actually are receiving the payments. And how's the dialogue? It said that performance reviews with the operators should be resumed. Have they resumed? Thank you.
Through you, Chairman, I think we'd have to take that back to the relevant director to get an update on that for you, because this audit was conducted towards the beginning of last financial year.
I have put a question on the table, and I'm still waiting for a response from David Scott as to how the budget for the current year is being achieved by an increase in income, because sheep prices, as Councillor Hewson will tell you, have gone through the roof, and I would expect it to be an income surplus at the year end, but to date I haven't heard anything from the first quarter. Just on that, I did. There was a workshop where the market director is Hugh Brown was confirmed how well the current year is going. So we look forward to a positive response, and hopefully we see the records, Alan, and a proper audit trail for ease of checking. Members wish to raise a question? I think I had, obviously on housing repairs, which was on page 69 to 70. It says here, Rachel, that it's been affected, well, we all know, by COVID, but the lack of management continuity, changes in staff, and it's essential that the new director and the team have in place good handover arrangement, and and the improvements are maintained, so there's a clear plan of action. So you'll be monitoring that, will you, during the year?
Yes, I can confirm we will be continuing to follow those up. So we do have some recommendations there that we need to see implemented, and we'll be seeking evidence to make sure that we're happy those can be closed. So we'll be monitoring that and reporting back to the committee as part of my standard progress reports on that.
Was at this stage satisfactory, which gives quite a bit of leeway for improvement.
Yes, absolutely. So there are a number of recommendations that we've made. Obviously, this is one of the areas where we've assigned a moderate organisational risk based on the findings. And so there are a number of higher priority recommendations that we need to see implemented. Obviously, this was one of the audits that, as I mentioned in the annual report, was delayed. So it was delivered quite late in the financial year and going into Q1. So the recommendations have only recently been made. So we don't expect to see those to be completed just yet. But we have got timeframes in place for all of them, and we'll hopefully have some progress to report at the next meeting.
Thank you very much. Anyone else? I've just got one further one, which I'd raised at the briefing, but just to keep you all informed, the contracts register, there appears to be discrepancies. We've had a new system, and Kieran did say, do you want to just update members as to what's gone on there?
I think you'd raised a question about whether we had made improvements in terms of procurement. So Dawn and I have worked with the procurement team, and there's been a number of developments. So we have developed standard terms and conditions for contracts. We've changed the way that decisions are made so that we record decisions when we award. But in specifically relating to the contracts register, we now, rather than having to send round a quarterly or a monthly reminder for people to update the contracts register, it's done automatically, so it's done in real time, and the contracts register is now available on the council's website.
Thank you very much. Thank you. So I take it there's no other member wishing to speak, so I will confirm the recommendation is to note the report, and that recommendation is that the committee receive and note the internal audit annual report and assurance opinion for 2021. So that report has been noted. Okay, thank you. Item number 7 is the monitoring officer, Kieran, to provide a brief introduction and further update to the report on the draft annual governance statement, of which there was a late appendix, I believe. Yeah. Over to you, Kieran. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Just like to draw members to the members' attention to the supplementary agenda, which is the larger pack of the two that you will have received, and again to issue apologies for not being able to provide that with the agenda. So this report concerns the draft annual governance statement, which I will call the AGS going forward. The AGS is a key component of the council's governance arrangements. It's a statutory requirement for the council to approve an AGS alongside its published statement of accounts. The purpose of this document is to provide a continual review of the effectiveness of the council's internal control and risk management systems, so as to give an assurance of their effectiveness and or produce a management action plan to address any identified weaknesses in either process. So the supplementary agenda pack that you will have received contains updates on the areas that were identified for 2020-2021, but also provides a table which identifies areas for 21-22 going forward. Due to a temporary change in the regulations covering reporting deadlines for the draft and audited statement of accounts, a draft version is now being presented to members, which will be published alongside the draft statement of accounts. That will then be subject to a review by our external audit, and then a final version will be produced for sign-off. This gives members the opportunity to provide any relevant comments before it's published alongside the draft statement of account. So that's my summary in terms of the report, Chair. Members are reminded that the report requests 2 things. 1, that the committee note the draft annual governance statement, and 2, approve a revised local code of corporate governance, which is set out in Appendix 2 of the supplementary agenda pack that you will have received. Now, the local code of corporate governance in February 2021, CIPFA released a guidance note in relation to the application of a good governance framework. The guidance concerned the impact of the continuing COVID pandemic on governance in local government bodies and the requirements of delivering good governance in local government. It takes into account the introduction of the CIPFA Financial Management Code during 2020-21. It was particularly relevant for the annual review of our systems of internal control and the AGS, because they're requirements under regulations issued by government. In light of the guidance, our local code of corporate governance has been reviewed alongside the annual governance statement to ensure its compliance with the new CIPFA guidance that has been released. The format of the local code of corporate governance provides a streamlined approach, and we've tried to remove any unnecessary duplication. That's a summary of the report, Chair. I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much, Kieran. I'd like to invite a proposer and a seconder for the recommendation. Councillor Glancy proposes and seconded Councillor Posner. Thank you very much. So I'll throw the debate open to members. If you wish to raise your hands and indicate you wish to speak, be fine. Thank you. I had nothing to add on this report. It's quite substantial and self-explanatory. So I take it there's no further questions from the floor. Okay, then we'll move to the vote on the recommendations. The recommendations are that the committee note the council's draft annual governance statement as set out in Appendix A to this report, and 2.2, approve the revised local code of corporate governance as set out in Appendix B, which you've all seen. So can I have a raise of hands for all of those in favour of the recommendations? That is unanimous. Yeah, thank you very much. So I confirm the result of the vote was unanimously in favour of the 2.1 and 2.2. And item number 8 is the independent review into the oversight of local audit and the transparency of local authority financial reporting, which was known as the Tony Redmond Review. Dawn, Director for Corporate Services, is going to provide a brief introduction. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Chair. So the report provides information to the committee on the independent review, as the Chair said, led by Sir Tony Redmond, into the effectiveness of local authority financial reporting and audit. Links are provided in the report to the full report from Sir Tony, and also the government's updated response is provided within the appendix, which sets out the recommendations, the government's initial response, and also a progress update to date. And you'll see that while some recommendations have been agreed, others are being considered further, and we are awaiting further guidance with regard to these. I've also attempted to draw out in paragraph 5.6 what the potential implications are for this council as a result of the review and the government's response. We've also had further consultation has been undertaken relating to the funding of the new burdens funding as a result of the additional work that's created by the recommendations made, and also regarding the proposed changes to the audit fee variations. Thank you.
Thank you, Dawn. Could I invite a proposer and a seconder for the recommendations? Councillor Illingworth proposes, and Councillor Posnett for seconder. Thank you. So I will now invite members to ask any questions on the Tony Redmond review, and then we'll go. So I beg your pardon, I'm looking at the last one. So we will ask members to raise their hand to indicate they wish to speak. Thank you. Councillor Hewson.
Under 5.8, this 15 million, have we any idea or when we will know whether we'll be allocated any money?
No, through you, Chair. The consultations just closed on that. There was a number of proposals as to how they would distribute that funding, and no knowledge of when we'll know what that might be. I think the concerns are that I think small district councils probably will struggle to get a decent share of that based on the options that were put forward, because they're looking, one of the options is around proportionality, and because we're one of the lower end of audit fees, we're likely to get a lower proportion of that. I think my concern is that I think those smaller audits are the ones that are going to go up by perhaps a greater percentage, because there's almost a core fee for sort of cost, really, like a fixed cost of conducting an audit, and I can see that it's those lower ones that are maybe less profitable to the private sector. So I think, no, I don't know the answer to that. We don't know when we'll get an answer, but I'm sure it's unlikely to cover the additional costs that we might see.
I remember when I worked in finance, the audit fee total budget, which included the audit of the grants, was something between 100 and 130,000. And currently, obviously, we're paying around the 50,000 plus the grant fee. So obviously it's come down, but maybe we're not getting quite the value that we used to get. I can just bring you up to date with the completion of the 2019-20 accounts, which has been outstanding with external audit for a considerable amount of time. They are looking to complete that exercise this Friday. Is that right, Dawn? Yeah. And also start the draft audit for 2021. So at last we're getting some progress on the audit, and let's get up to date, because we noticed that for the next 2 years the publishing of local authority records has been revised to the 30th of September. I'm not sure whether that's a good thing or not.
Sorry, if I could just come in there. Sorry, apologies just for the correction there. The 2021 accounts are likely to be are likely to be published on Friday. We still do not have a date for the audit, and I think that just exemplifies the issue that we've got with the audit market, that we're supposed to be publishing final audited accounts by the end of September, and yet we still do not have a date for the audit.
Difficult for you to plan your workload. Yeah. Okay, I'll take it. Then we'll move towards the vote. There's no vote this time. I confirm the recommendation is to note, and that recommendation is that the committee note the update on the Redmond review and the potential implications for the council. So I confirm that that has been noted for the minutes. Thank you. Item 9, any other business. I've got no note of any items for any other business. Can I take it that no one else has? In that case, the meeting, which started at 6:30, is closed at 7:14. Thank you. Just before you go now, the meeting's closed. There is an opportunity to have a workshop with Rachel